Thanks, everyone. I'm now going to look at a couple of easy ideas. So, I'm sure that most of you have done this before. If you draw with oil pastels, so this is called wax resist, and you can also use wax crayons, normal wax crayons. So if you don't have a big budget and you don't have much in your classroom, the learners can draw with oil pastels or wax crayons, and then you can always go over it with the food coloring or the coffee. And the fact that the wax or the oil pastels shines through, this technique is called wax resist. So I've just done something very simple. Of course, you can do different colors and sky and grass or whatever. So that's the first and most simple technique that I am going to suggest. If you think the thing is overwhelming, use oil pastels with a color or several colors. This little house here is basically a collage. It's an image of a collage that is made purely from magazine mosaics. So it is colors and textures and things cut out from a magazine to create a little house. Okay, so you may want to today just work with magazines and think, gosh, that's interesting. It's very easy. You could say to your learners that they're going to make their whole home or house or building out of textures and colors from magazines. So that is a second very simple technique. A third one is using different kinds of paper. So there's no reason why you can't create all sorts of interesting papers for yourselves to use. These are actually wonderful types of earthy wrapping paper. And of course, you can use newspaper. So I just wanted to show one image of all sorts of different kinds of papers. You can see the trees and things in the background. So if you don't use magazines, you can use just simple kinds of textured paper cut up. This one, of course, is found objects. So if you're really inspired and you've got these things in your classroom, set up your materials table. The learners will absolutely love it. And you've got your very simple house. Now, everybody is different. I love small and I love nature. So I live in a tiny house in the middle of nature, and nature is my wealth. Okay, somebody else might want a big palace or something. But I didn't want to present this project as a big materialistic thing where people have to have big houses and cars outside. And it's not about that. It's about home is where the heart is. So that is important. And lastly, this idea here is a little bit of a fantasy one because this person's brought personal symbols in. So there's no reason why you can't create with color and then print over and draw into it. Remember, mixed media and collage, you're actually making layers. So you can stick different layers on which you can then draw over or print over or use symbols. So it could be a kind of a design that has a really heartfelt feel to it. All right, so today we've got a wide range of things to choose from. You, no doubt, will narrow it down a little bit for your learners. Okay. So I'd just like to show you one more thing quickly. I know that many of you, as I said, have already done this, but looking at the jik or the bleach, it works with food coloring, it works with teddy dye, it works with coffee. It doesn't work with drawing ink, it doesn't work with other paints, it only works with these things. Now, when I say work, I mean, okay, let's take, let's say if I've created a background or if I've painted onto newspaper or paper, you can then take your earbuds. Now the reason I say earbuds is because the jik eats into brushes. And not everybody likes jik, it's completely optional. So you don't really want to stick your brushes in there. You can use sticks or earbuds. And you can draw into the different colors. It takes like a minute for it to show up, and you start to get beautiful effects. If the colors are wet, you'll get very nice blended kind of chancy effects. You may want to think about drying time, because if the colors are dry, then you can get very clear lines and clear symbols. So just keep that in mind with the jik. I think I've about covered everything in terms of materials. Yeah, are there any questions about materials for now? Everybody's also got a jar of water on the table to wash your brushes. Okay, so you've got a big brush for the painting and you've got a smaller glue brush for the glues. All right, before we start, I'd like to just talk about one other little thing. So just give me one moment. In a moment, I'm going to take you through a visualization, and that's going to help you in your inner eye to imagine the home that's in your heart, let's put it that way. What I'm going to suggest for today is that what I'm going to suggest is that you start your atmosphere or your background with very simple colors and your large brush. So when you're working with layers and learners, if you cover your paper in color, it's already less daunting and scary, because there's something on the paper. So it's much easier to do the background first and then put things on top of it than to put the house first and try and do the background last. So in your imagination, in your imaginary exercise, you're going to get a feeling about where this house is going to be. So for example, let's say it's in a forest with a lake in front of it. What I'm going to suggest is that you do an impression of the forest and the lake. So it's not going to be done, it's not going to take a long time to do. I mean, you could just create some idea of forest. So there's kind of an idea of trees. Because remember, this is just the background. So I'm not even worrying to be too careful at this stage. And you can take a little bit more time, but I'm just suggesting you do an impression of trees and water or wherever it's going to be. So remember, you're then going to put your house on top of it. And later, if you want to put details into the tree or details in the water, you can come back when it's dry and use the oil pastels on top. So you're going to set the scene like that, and then you're going to have fun creating your layered collage. Okay, so it could be quite flat, or you could want to include perspective. So perspective means that things get smaller as they go into the distance. So you might want to think about that, and you might want to think about what is behind and what is in front, what is small and what is large. So you'll be looking at proportion. If you look at the proportion of this roof, it's got a huge kind of very impressive dome on top, and actually a massive arch as well. This roof is smaller and it's near the top. So we're looking at, do you want your roof to be the focal point, or do you want your door to be the focal point, etc. So these are the kinds of things that you're going to think about. And the test paper, I've given you a test paper to just sketch with the oil pastels. I haven't given pencils and erasers, because if you give the learners pencils and erasers, they'll sit there for 3 lessons trying to get it all perfect. So the oil, that's there to kind of give yourself an idea, kind of a rough sketch of what your house is going to look like. And then you're going to go straight into cutting and pasting and sticking and layering.